Right, welcome to IrVoting, a channel dedicated to election reform. This channel is sort of made in conjunction with some other channels that will be produced. They're just intended to sort of focus energy on specific issues to see if that helps in this process of trying to get something to really change in this world. Some real practical reforms to be made. This channel will primarily be focused on election reform in basically two types of reform. The first would be instant runoff voting, which eliminates the spoiler effect in, for example, presidential elections, where if there's more than two candidates, there's always the possibility that people of like mind will end up splitting their vote between those two candidates, and then a less than majority candidate will end up winning. It's a real problem where people feel intimidated by this spoiler effect and don't vote their conscience. They vote instead to avoid a lesser of evil from mistakenly acquiring an office they don't deserve by popular support. So anyway, it breaks the system, and the intent of this channel would be to produce content relevant to that subject. That's persuasive and gets people to understand the importance of what such a reform would mean to our democracy. The second issue would be the fact that our legislative bodies are primarily controlled by the two-party system, and in sort of a malicious way, in the sense that they attempt to carve out geographic districts to maximize the number of voters they can disenfranchise. And that's really what the two parties are out to do, is cancel out the votes of as many people as they possibly can, to shut them up, to prevent them from getting a representative that they deserve. So a simple reform would be to open the election system to people would still vote locally, but they would vote out of a larger pool of candidates. Same system as instant runoff voting would be used, where you would have a progressive choice, a first choice, second choice, third choice, and through that system, your best choice would receive your vote, and your best choice would, in 99% of the time, be somebody quite consistent with your ideology. So in essence, you could never lose an election for a legislative body. You'd never have you'd never have the horrible prospect of living in a district that was primarily owned by one party in terms of the majority, where your vote always was pretty much meaningless. That would never happen. Every vote would count, because the only way somebody could get into office is through affirmative votes. They couldn't drag any they couldn't call somebody a constituent who did not vote for them. It would be that simple. This option would also eliminate all the regional pork and all the little nonsense that goes on, having people who are essentially elected not based on their ideology, but based on where they live and what community they're representing. Rather than representing people, they end up representing geography, and that's very destructive to the political process. So anyway, those are the two main reforms. I definitely produce content where it explains them better. And really the mission is sort of open here. The agenda is sort of open. The idea is to probably create a web page consistent with the channel. And the idea is just to figure out means to get it understood by the general public that just how important these reforms would be. I mean, they would just make huge differences to how the system works. As it currently exists, you're basically, all the compromise takes place before you vote. The parties decide who the candidates will be, they decide what the agenda will be, and by creating this spoiler effect, by leaving that spoiler effect in place, they eliminate any real choice. I mean, you're stuck with one of these two bad choices. And that's the way the parties want it, and that's why the special interest in those parties want it. And that's the real thing we're fighting here, is the fact that there are minority groups in the society, government employee unions, teachers unions on one side, religious fanatics, billionaires on the other side, who enjoy more power than they deserve because of the current system, because they own a piece of a political party, and through that ownership can basically dictate policy where they shouldn't have that much power to dictate, where the public's opinion is they're able to step all over it and trample on it because of that influence. And that's the real obstacle, is because we have to convince those people that it's in their broader interest to vote for a better democracy than to take advantage for themselves. Their personal interest really shouldn't be stronger than their public interest, and they will gain more from having a better democracy than the small gain they make by having ownership of a piece of a political system. But that is the obstacle, is that there are these segments of the population who will be resistant to breaking down the party system because they feather their bed with that system. But that's really the end objective, is to pretty much eliminate the compromise that takes place before we vote and have the compromise take place in the political bodies, in the legislative bodies. Everyone should be represented in those bodies proportionately and fairly, and the argument should be as real as it can get, as honestly American as it can get. It shouldn't be already reduced and made eviscerated, controlled by really a catastrophic compromise that takes place before we vote. The compromise should take place in the public, in front of us. The argument should take place in front of us. I think a lot of policy would never be possible if it had to take place, if there had to be a real debate regarding that policy, because there would be people in the body to make sure the truth was heard. And they couldn't get away with these compromises, and they're effectively lying. They lie to us all the time, the current politicians. And if you have the power to vote for a broader range of candidates, you're not going to choose a liar. You're not going to deliberately say, I'm going to elect Joe Liar to be my representative. You're going to want somebody who understands what you understand, who pretty much sees the world as you see it, and is going to defend the logic and the rationality that you believe in. And that's the way the system should work. That's how a representative democracy should work. This is sort of there's another group of people who might say that it's better to just have a direct democracy. This channel won't focus on that. It's certainly an issue that can be discussed, but the liabilities of direct democracy is that the average citizen isn't going to be informed enough to make the right choices, and they're not going to be obliged to defend their vote. You really need to have a representative body, because you need people that have to logically defend the positions they take. And it also is more likely to preserve constitutional rights, because we see what happens if you give people the power. They're just not going to pay attention to the responsibilities. They're just going to say, well, what's in my interest? And it's not about what's in your interest, it's what's in society's interest. And that argument is going to be more focused through representatives who are obliged to understand the nuances of legislation than people who just vote for a sentence, 2 sentences of jargon that have nothing to do with implementing real policy. So anyway, not the greatest introduction video, but that's all it is. It's just an introduction video. And so hopefully we will move forward with better content. You can PM the channel if you have some sort of links or you have some contribution you want to make. The idea hopefully would be to take videos that are well made and make a statement on the subject and promote them through this channel, either by directly uploading them, the creation of playlists. You can look at the favorites. We'll favorite some good videos, and just attempt to create some support behind this initiative to get these reforms, to give them some sort of potential to be actualized, and probably through extorting the current system. I mean, it's also a presumption of this channel that the only way to fix this system is through the system. We have to get the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to put our initiatives on the ballot. They have to make it possible for this to take place. It can't happen without them. So one of them has to be extorted into it. So we just have to get enough people to have a loud enough voice to become one of those special interests, that's allowed to tell the party what they've got to do. And so we have to get enough numbers to merely be able to tell the party, one of the two parties, make this agenda a priority, or you won't get any votes from us. All right, that should be enough. Thank you very much.